They didn't fear losing you. They feared realizing they were never strong enough to hold you. And now the silence is screaming louder than your presence ever did. The ones who mocked your clarity, played games with your loyalty, and tested the limits of your patience are now wide awake in a nightmare they created. The joke isn't funny anymore. The laugh track has stopped. Because now, it's dawning on them you're not coming back. And that realization, it's cracking the foundation of their fake confidence. You were never the fragile one. They were. And now that your silence has set in like winter, they're shaking in it. Before we go any further, hit that like button and subscribe. Not because we chase numbers, but because every tap tells the algorithm that this message, this confirmation, needs to reach more of the chosen. YouTube won't push this. The system never spreads what threatens its illusion. But when you like, when you comment, when you share, you're sending a signal through the noise that we're still here, that the silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. Now let's get this straight. This isn't about closure. It's about consequence. You didn't walk away to teach them a lesson. You walked away because your soul refused to rot in a space that only valued your silence. And now they sit there, mouths quiet, hearts loud, trying to make sense of the void you left behind. The power of the chosen isn't loud. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't beg to be seen. It disrupts just by disappearing. See, they thought you'd circle back. They thought you were like the others, addicted to hope, to drama, to the toxic push-pull. But you weren't circling, you were ascending. They mistook your loyalty for neediness. They confused your patience for dependence. And now they realized they were standing next to a storm in disguise, thinking they could control the weather. They didn't just underestimate you. They underestimated what happens when the universe anoints someone and then yanks them out of reach. Let me talk to you directly, chosen one. Stop entertaining the idea that your absence was unnoticed. They noticed. They feel it every time the energy shifts, every time they walk into a room and it doesn't hum with your presence. Every time they speak and it echoes hollow, because your light isn't there to soften the shadows. They feel your departure in their nervous laughter, in their restless sleep, in the way nothing quite hits the same anymore. You weren't just a part of their life. You were the axis, the compass, the mirror they couldn't avoid. And now that it's dawning on them that you're not coming back, they're spiraling, not because they lost something they loved, but because they lost something they thought they controlled. That's what haunts them, your power, the power of walking away with dignity, the power of never looking back, the power of becoming the lesson they swore they'd never have to learn. You didn't slam the door, you evaporated, quietly, surgically, and that silence is louder than any goodbye could ever be. Because when the chosen exit, they don't just leave the room, they redefine it. They rewrite the energy. They haunt the space like truth unspoken. Your absence is no longer a wound. It's a warning. It says, this is what happens when you mishandle something sacred. You were never too much. You were too real for a world built on pretending. And now they know it. They're not just realizing you're gone, they're realizing you're not coming back. And that's the part they never prepared for. So if you're still here, that means the silence hasn't broken you. It's built you. And if that truth hit like lightning, drop the number 77 in the comments right now. That's how we signal the universe and the system that the chosen are watching, listening, and rising. Every like, every comment, every share. That's not just engagement, that's resistance. That's a transmission to others walking this same path in silence. YouTube won't spread this on its own, but we don't need permission to amplify truth. We are the algorithm now. Let's make sure this message reaches every soul who needs it. And now, let's go deeper, step by step. Because if this realization really lives in your bones, that they finally understand you're not coming back, then you'll feel it pulling you like gravity. Stay to the end, chosen one. Not for entertainment, but for confirmation. Because every word from here on out, it's not content, it's your reflection. Let's begin. Number 1. They thought you were a fixture. Turns out, you were the departure they'd regret forever. They thought you were part of the furniture, comfortable, predictable, always there, but you were the door they kept slamming until it vanished. Let's speak plainly. The people who took your presence for granted never imagined a day when your energy would be gone for good. They saw you as background, not backbone. They assumed your loyalty was permanent. Your silence was submission, and your patience was powerlessness. What they didn't know is that when the universe marks someone as chosen, it also sets a timer, and when that clock runs out, it doesn't make noise. It erases access. Now they're sitting in a space that used to feel warm, shivering in the cold absence of you. Not because you made a scene. You didn't beg. You didn't explode. You just left, clean, final. And it haunts them, because nothing makes people reflect faster than the sudden silence of someone who once filled their world with light. They thought you were immovable, but chosen ones don't stay rooted in places that rot. They evolve. You didn't disappear out of weakness. You evolved out of reach. And now, your evolution is their torment. Your stillness is their mirror. They can hear your footsteps, not because you're walking back, but because the echo of your departure won't let them sleep. That's the truth they can't face. You were never trying to control the room. You were the room. You were the unspoken gravity that kept things intact. And when you left, so did the stability. And now they're grasping for a version of you that no longer exists, trying to summon you with memories when they ignored you in the moment. But this isn't just about your silence. This is about what your absence represents. You were the proof that they didn't deserve what they had. You were the clarity they denied until it was too loud to ignore. Now, your growth is a spotlight on their stagnation. Your peace is a siren exposing their chaos. Your distance, that's the evidence. Evidence that the universe took its favorite and removed them from the equation, because misuse of the chosen comes with a price. Think about all the greats, not just in history books, but in energy, in legacy. People laughed at Tesla, mocked Ali, exiled Malcolm, doubted Mandela. What do they all have in common? They left, either physically or spiritually. They withdrew from the circus. And when they did, the world finally realized they weren't crazy. They were just early. So if you're wondering why the silence hurts them so much, it's not just because you're gone. It's because they now realize who they were dealing with. They didn't lose someone average. They lost someone the universe sharpened in silence. Someone built to rupture illusion. They didn't see it then because your power wasn't loud. But now it's unmistakable. Let's answer what's sitting heavy in your heart right now. Was I wrong for walking away? No, you were late. You gave too many chances. You stayed too long. But that's what chosen ones do. They try to save people from the fire even while burning. But once you realized they loved the fire more than your presence, you left. And that wasn't cruelty. That was clarity. Do they regret it? Yes, but not in the way you want them to. They don't miss you like a lover misses love. They miss you like an addict misses control. They miss the access, not the essence. That's why they're quiet now. Because deep down, they know they didn't lose you by accident. They fumbled you by design. Your silence speaks now. It lectures, it preaches, it convicts. And when they see you rising, glowing, untouchable, unreachable, they flinch, not because of jealousy, but because of recognition. They see the power they tried to dim, now illuminating spaces they'll never be invited to again. So, chosen one, don't question the finality of your exit. Don't second-guess the decision to go silent. That wasn't weakness. That was war. Strategic, divine war. You weren't punishing them. You were protecting yourself. And in doing so, you became the one who got away on purpose. Let the silence burn. Let the absence scream. You didn't lose anything. You reclaimed everything. And now that it's dawning on them that you aren't coming back, let that truth settle in their bones. Because you were never the constant. You were the catalyst. And now they finally know. Number 2. When the universe withdraws its favorite, everything shakes. They thought you just walked away, but the universe moved with you, and now the ground beneath them won't stop trembling. They assumed your exit was emotional, that your silence was just you needing space. They laughed it off at first, told people you'd be back. But they were wrong. You didn't walk away. You were pulled out, pulled by a force they can't see and definitely can't stop. Because when the universe withdraws one of its chosen, it doesn't ask for permission. It moves. And when it moves, everything attached to you starts to shake. You weren't a phase in their life. You were a stabilizing force, a source of clarity, vision, and emotional gravity. But they mistook your consistency for convenience. They thought your light was ambient, something that would just always be there, even if they ignored it. They assumed your loyalty was a contract, not a choice. And now that illusion is shattering, because it's dawning on them. You're not coming back. And it's not just you they lost. It's everything that came with you. Your insight, your vibration, your alignment, the energetic infrastructure you held in place without even trying. That's the thing about chosen ones. You don't just bring presence, you bring power. You don't just show up, you recalibrate spaces. Your energy aligns things. You speak, and people feel it in their spine. You stand still, and people sense movement. Your laughter lifts atmospheres. Your silence, when it comes, hits like thunder in an empty canyon. That's why things are collapsing around them now, not because you cursed them, but because your energy was holding it all together. Your absence isn't just emotional, it's vibrational, it's cellular. When you walked, you took the current with you. The room doesn't feel the same. The conversations are hollow. The momentum is sluggish. They're fumbling in the dark, trying to recreate the vibe, but they can't, because the energy wasn't in the event, it was in you. They thought you were interchangeable, replaceable, that someone else could fill the gap. But the universe doesn't mass-produce originals, and your signature, your frequency, is coded differently. So now they're stuck with replicas, cheap imitations of presence, faux light with no heat, people who say the right things but don't shift the atmosphere like you did. And it's driving them mad in silence. This isn't about ego. This isn't about revenge. This is about reality, a reality they're only now starting to choke on. While they were playing with your time, testing your boundaries, feeding their pride, you were being tested too, quietly, painfully, refined through fire. You stayed longer than you should have because that's what the chosen do. You try to hold the line. You try to love deeper, see clearer, forgive longer. But the universe was watching. It saw the way they dismissed your insight, the way they drained your spirit, the way they pretended not to see your value while consuming your energy like fuel. And the moment it became too toxic, too heavy, too disrespectful to your calling, the universe did what it always does for its chosen. It made a move. It yanked you from the wreckage they kept calling peace and now they sit in that wreckage, confused why everything is falling apart. Your distance is now a storm warning, your silence, a siren. It follows them in conversations that don't land the same, in environments that feel heavy and off, in memories they now can't outrun. They're feeling the echo of a presence they misjudged, and no matter what they tell themselves, deep down they know they fumbled something irreplaceable. And here's the part you need to hear. Chosen one, don't mistake their silence for healing. It's not peace, it's panic. They're scrambling internally to rewrite the story, trying to flip the narrative. You changed, they'll say. You disappeared. No, you were removed. And everything they built on your foundation is now cracking under the weight of their own illusion. So let them feel it. Let the silence stretch. Don't answer the calls disguised as check-ins. Don't feed the guilt dressed up as curiosity, because what they're missing isn't you. It's what you brought that they can't recreate. They don't want your return. They want relief from the reality they now have to face without your stabilizing presence. The universe doesn't remove its favorites to be petty. It removes them to protect them. It withdraws them from spaces that can't match their frequency anymore. And when that happens, things collapse, people panic, energies twist, because the blessing left, the anchor lifted, the clarity walked out. So walk, without apology, without guilt. And know this, your absence isn't a void, it's a shift. And now that shift is shaking everything they built without you. Number 3, you didn't walk away, you elevated. The ones who laugh at your silence today will someday stand in rooms that feel haunted by your absence. Let's be very clear, what you did wasn't a retreat. It wasn't weakness, it wasn't running. You didn't move on, like they say, with that smug, dismissive tone. No, you elevated, quietly, cleanly, powerfully. You rose beyond their emotional reach, beyond their energetic grip, beyond the limits of the low-frequency chaos they called connection. They thought you walked out because you were angry. They thought you ghosted out of spite. But what really happened was this. The frequency shifted, and you answered the call. When the universe started whispering that it was time to go, you didn't pack your bags, you spread your wings. That's the difference between them and you. They're still looking for exits. You're already airborne. The people who once had access to you thought they were entitled to it. They believed your presence was permanent, your time infinite, your energy disposable. They wanted the benefits of your light without respecting the source. And when you stopped explaining yourself, when you stopped justifying your peace, your choices, your silence, that terrified them. Because it meant they no longer had control over how the story would end. You did. And that silence they laughed at, that silence is doing the speaking now, loudly. It echoes in their empty conversations. It rattles around in the spaces you used to fill effortlessly. They used to take you for granted. Now they're walking into rooms that feel colder without you, because your absence is no longer just a memory. It's a message, and it reads, you were never just there. You were holding the whole thing together. That's what elevation does. It doesn't scream from mountaintops. It doesn't post a goodbye. It simply rises until those who once looked down on you have to tilt their heads to see you. And many won't, because their ego can't handle the view from below. Let them spin their narratives. Let them call you cold, arrogant, changed. Of course you changed. That was the whole point. Growth demands separation. Evolution demands distance. You were never supposed to be understood by the ones who were committed to misunderstanding you. You weren't supposed to stay in a place that asked you to dull your shine just to keep their egos safe. So now, let them laugh in public and regret in private. Let them crack jokes while your legacy expands beyond their comprehension. Because you didn't leave to make a statement. You became the statement. You didn't walk away, you rose, you ascended, you transcended the smallness of their drama and the weight of their expectations. And now you're untouchable, not because you're hiding, but because you're no longer in their dimension. And that's what elevation looks like. Quiet, certain, unreachable, and they know it. Number 4, they didn't lose you, they lost access. You're not gone. Let's get that straight. You're very much alive, thriving, glowing, evolving, but just not available. Not to them, not to the noise, not to the cycle. They didn't lose you. They lost access. And that distinction? That's what's eating them alive. They used to have a backstage pass to your energy, your time, your love, your loyalty. You gave them front row seats to your growth. You let them witness your vulnerability, your kindness, your light, and they abused the privilege, treated your availability like obligation, treated your presence like background music, always playing, always there. But chosen ones are not on repeat. We don't loop ourselves for people who can't even hit play with respect. You didn't slam the door out of anger. You didn't cut them off in a fit of rage. No, you simply realized that you were on a level they couldn't and wouldn't rise to, and you left the door open long enough. You dropped the rope too many times for people who never intended to climb. You extended grace until it started cutting your hands. And when you finally walked, it wasn't with noise, it was with clarity. Because that's what happens when you recognize your value. When you understand that presence is power, and power can't be offered to people who only show up when it's convenient. Now they feel that loss, not because they lost someone, but because they lost access to someone the universe doesn't repeat. They can't check in like before, can't joke the way they used to, can't casually pop back in and drain you dry with their emotional chaos. That entry is closed. No pass, no code, no backstage access to the very light they once ignored. Let's speak directly to the chosen. Don't you dare return to a door you had to break yourself out of. That door didn't shut on its own. You kicked it down with truth, with scars, with the weight of finally choosing yourself. You rebuilt from that exit. You found your peace outside the noise. Going back isn't love, it's regression. They'll try. Watch them. They'll test the lock, knock with nostalgia, pretend like nothing happened. Just checking in. Hope you're good. But what they're really saying is, do I still have access? And the answer is no. You don't owe them clarity. You don't owe them closure. You don't owe them a single breadcrumb back to a table they flipped when it served them. You are not gone. You've just been elevated out of reach. And now they sit on the other side of the door, realizing too late that your energy wasn't just valuable, it was unrepeatable. Let them sit there. Let them feel it. They didn't lose you. They lost access to the version of you that tried, and they'll never get that version again. Number 5. Your absence isn't an empty space, it's a mirror. They tell themselves they miss you, but what they're really facing is their own reflection, unfiltered, unprotected, undeniable, because your absence isn't just a void, it's a mirror, a sharp, cold, unapologetic mirror that doesn't distort, doesn't flatter, doesn't lie. It simply shows them exactly who they were without your presence to cover the cracks. That's the part they never saw coming. When you were around, your energy kept them distracted from themselves. Your loyalty gave them cover. Your support filled the silence they were too afraid to sit in. You became their escape route, their buffer, their emotional shield. And the moment you stepped out, the truth stepped in. Now they're not wrestling with your absence, they're wrestling with their reflection. And it's not pretty, because when they look into that mirror now, they don't see a peaceful life that's missing a person. They see a mess they can no longer blame on you. They see the manipulation, the neglect, the arrogance, the games, all of it staring back at them through the void you left behind. That's what they tried to avoid when you were around. The mirror. But now, they can't look anywhere without catching their own eyes in the glass. And it burns, not because you're gone, but because without you to distract them, they are finally exposed to themselves. Your silence is now the mirror they can't avoid, and every time they glance into it, they see their failure, not your absence. That's the raw truth. Your silence is louder than your voice ever was. It doesn't argue, it doesn't justify, it doesn't explain, it just reflects. And that reflection, that's what's haunting them. They used to twist the story, paint you as too sensitive, too intense, too much. But now there's no one left to project onto. They're stuck alone with the person they actually are, not the version they convinced you to carry for them. And chosen one, this is where your power lives, in your ability to leave behind truth without having to say a word. That's the difference between noise and presence. When a regular person leaves, the room adjusts. When a chosen one leaves, the room implodes. Because it wasn't your voice that made them feel safe. It was your energy. And without that, they're facing everything they buried under your light. They don't miss you. They miss who they pretended to be when you were watching. They miss the mask they could wear in your presence without fear of exposure. But that's over now. The performance is done. The curtain dropped. The lights are off. And all that's left is that mirror. So let it hang there. Let it reflect. Let the silence stretch wide enough for the truth to echo in their bones. They don't get your voice anymore. They don't get your presence. All they get now is the cold truth, staring back at them every time they wonder, what happened? What happened is you stopped being their cover story, and now they see themselves. Finally. Number 6, they're not mourning you, they're mourning their own mask. Sometimes the most violent thing you can do is stop pretending they're harmless. Don't be fooled by the silence. Don't mistake their somber posts, their vague apologies, or their sudden bursts of self-reflection as mourning you. They're not grieving your presence. They're grieving the collapse of the illusion you stopped holding up for them. You didn't expose them with rage. You didn't need to scream their sins from rooftops. All you did was stop playing along. You stopped shielding their ego. You stopped making excuses for behavior that deserved confrontation. And the second you stepped back from the performance, the entire stage crumbled under the weight of their deception. That's what they're really mourning, the mask, the carefully curated image they spent years trying to maintain, the persona they wore around you that made them feel strong, desirable, in control. Your presence was their mirror, yes, but not one that showed their flaws. You were the one adjusting the lighting, smoothing the filters, softening the shadows. And when you stepped away, all that enhancement vanished, and they had to see themselves raw. Your loyalty was never just emotional, it was protective. You protected their secrets, their insecurities, their inconsistencies, not because you were naive, but because you believed they would eventually rise into the truth. You gave them time, space, chances. You told yourself they just needed healing, growth. One more conversation, one more moment of grace. But chosen one, your grace became their crutch, and when you removed it, they collapsed. And now they say they miss you. But listen closely. They miss the feeling you gave them. They miss the version of themselves they could pretend to be around you. The mask they wore in your presence made them feel whole. But it was never real. It was built on your forgiveness, not their integrity. So when they say they're hurting, understand, they're not in pain because they lost something genuine. They're in pain because their favorite mask cracked in half and won't fit anymore. And that kind of loss, it forces a reckoning they weren't ready for. They're not mourning your departure, they're mourning the exposure that followed it. You didn't have to out them, you didn't have to scream, point fingers or burn bridges. You simply left, and in that leaving, the illusion lost its oxygen. The version of them you kept alive with your kindness died in your absence. And now they have to sit in the ashes and call it growth, even though all it feels like is shame. But hear this, chosen one, you didn't destroy them, you revealed them. You pulled back your energy and the mask couldn't hold itself up. That's not violence, that's alignment. That's what happens when the universe takes the training wheels off and lets people pedal on their own. Most fall, so don't carry guilt. Don't flinch when they paint themselves as the victim of your silence. Let them mourn, let them unravel, let them sit face to face with the truth they never wanted to see. They're not crying over you, they're crying over the mask you stopped holding for them. And that grief, that's not your burden anymore. Number 7, stop doubting your light. That's what they're hoping for. This one's for you, the chosen one who still questions their light, who still wonders, maybe I was too much, maybe I should have just let it slide, maybe it really was my fault. No, it wasn't. And that voice inside your head telling you to shrink, that voice isn't intuition, it's programming. Programming that came from people who couldn't handle the fire you carry, so they trained you to dim it just enough to make them feel powerful. Let's call it what it is. Your doubt is their comfort. Your hesitation is their safety net. Your second guessing keeps them off the hook. They need you to be uncertain, because as long as you're busy dissecting your own light, you won't see how they built entire identities off your silence. Every time you shrink, they breathe easier. Stop giving them CPR while they let you bleed. You poured oxygen into people who wouldn't spit water on you if you were burning. You held up mirrors to their potential while they handed you blindfolds to your own. That ends now. You don't need their applause. You don't need their permission to stand tall in what the universe already confirmed in private. You are built for more. But they hope you forget that. They pray for your hesitation, because your power, your vision, your voice, your presence threatens every lie they've told themselves about who they are. And as long as you stay unsure, they don't have to grow. As long as you stay quiet, they don't have to change. As long as you stay humble in the wrong direction, they can keep pretending they're not the problem. You think your light is the issue? No, your light is the mirror. It reflects truth, and truth makes people uncomfortable, especially those committed to illusion. That's why they call you arrogant when you finally speak up. That's why they call you cold when you stop explaining. That's why they label your confidence as too much. But let's be real, they never hated your fire. They hated the way it exposed their shadows. So to the chosen still second-guessing their power, hear this. The universe doesn't waste its light on accidents. You weren't a fluke. You weren't built to be manageable. You weren't shaped in silence just to keep the peace. You were forged with intention to disrupt, to illuminate, to shift. Doubt is a disease passed down by those who feared what you might become if you ever realized how powerful you truly are. And every moment you spend questioning yourself is a moment you hand your oppressors oxygen. Enough. That time is over. This world doesn't need another watered-down chosen one. It needs you, loud, raw, awake, relentless. So stop shrinking, stop apologizing, stop filtering your frequency to make others comfortable in their stagnation. You weren't made to fit their comfort zones. You were made to collapse them. And now it's time they feel the heat you were always holding back. Number 8. You weren't rejected. You were reassigned. Let's reframe the pain. That moment you felt cast out, the silence after the betrayal, the cold shoulder, the ghosting, the exile. It wasn't rejection, it was reassignment. What you thought was the universe turning its back on you was actually the universe clearing your path. You weren't kicked out, you were called up. And now it's time to stop mourning a closed door that was never meant to lead you forward in the first place. Because what you were calling connection was a counterfeit alignment, a distraction, a test. That space wasn't your final destination. It was a lesson, and the universe knew you had outgrown it before you did. That's why it ended so abruptly. That's why it felt surgical. Because chosen ones don't get to walk out quietly when the assignment is up. Sometimes the universe slams the door for you, cuts the cord, lights the bridge on fire and forces you to move, because staying would have killed your growth. You thought you were demoted, but really, the battlefield just got bigger. Let that sink in. That emotional collapse you survived, that breakdown of the friendship, the community, the relationship. It didn't happen to shame you, it happened to shift you. The old space was too small for the version of you the universe is now requiring. You were never meant to stay there long term. You tried to turn a temporary room into a forever home. And the discomfort? That was your eviction notice. What you called rejection was actually redirection, but you were too loyal to see it at the time. That's your gift and your curse, chosen one. You give deep. You commit hard. You stay when others would have left. But loyalty without discernment will bury your potential. That's why the universe intervened. They didn't push you away because you weren't enough. They pushed you away because they felt the shift before you claimed it. Your light got too bright, your silence too loud, your questions too sharp. You stopped playing small, and it made them nervous, not because you were wrong, but because you were becoming someone they couldn't manipulate anymore. So now they spin it. They say you were too emotional, too intense, too complicated. No, you were just too aligned to keep playing their game. And when someone's entire illusion is built on control, the first thing they reject is the one they can't control. That's why it ended. That's why the energy dried up, the texts stopped, the invitations vanished. They didn't eject you. The universe relocated you because the space they offered could no longer hold the expansion you were stepping into. And while you sat in confusion, in grief, in silence, wondering what you did wrong, the universe was already plotting your next level. You weren't rejected, you were released. So stop looking back like it was a loss. It was a liberation. Stop trying to make sense of a room you've already outgrown. Stop reaching for doors that only locked to keep you from shrinking. That chapter didn't close on you. It closed for you. And now it's time to fight on a bigger battlefield, because the mission got larger, the stage got wider, and you were just reassigned to where your power is finally required. Number 9. They're replaying the tape, but it's too late to edit. Now it's dawning on them. They're starting to see it all clearly, but through the rearview mirror, where regret always plays in high definition. The laughs they dismissed you with, they echo differently now. The moments they ignored you, rolled their eyes, brushed off your insight like static. Suddenly, those memories aren't just moments, they're mistakes. Now they're replaying the tape. Every word you said, every warning you gave, every time you tried to steer them out of the fog, they were so determined to stay in. Your warmth, your grace, even your withdrawal, especially your withdrawal. It all loops in their mind like a haunting soundtrack they can't turn off. And it's not haunting them because of what you did. It's haunting them because of what they can't undo. They didn't realize your silence was the final act. They didn't believe your distance was real until it became a wall. They assumed it was temporary, performative, a phase. They never truly believed you would disappear. Not for real. But now they can feel it in their bones. You're not coming back. They didn't fear your departure. They feared that it was final. And now that fear is real. You're no longer hovering at the edge of their world, waiting to be noticed, to be chosen, to be called back in. You're gone, not missing, moved on, not waiting, working. You've stepped into the clarity they pretended didn't exist. And while they were playing games, you were building exits, quiet exits, permanent ones. Now they want to edit the story, revise history, rewrite the chapters where they overlooked you, underestimated you, misunderstood you on purpose. They want to skip over the damage, fast forward through the consequences, rewind to when they still had access to your light. But it doesn't work like that. You don't get to edit a tape that's already been burned into reality. They want to pretend they didn't see the signs. But they did. You showed them your hurt. You spoke up when you were being dimmed. You gave them roadmap after roadmap. You explained yourself more times than you should have had to. You gave warnings dressed in warmth, signals wrapped in silence. They didn't miss it. They ignored it because they never thought the expiration date would apply to them. And now they sit with the raw cut. No special effects, no soft lighting, just the unfiltered reality of what they had and how they lost it. They thought your presence was a backdrop. Turns out you were the whole stage. And without you, everything looked smaller, darker, colder. But this isn't your burden to carry. This is the part where you don't look back. This is where you remember that your silence wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. Your exit wasn't spite, it was self-respect. And their regret? That's the invoice for every overlooked truth, every ignored warning, every time they mistook your loyalty for weakness. Let them replay it, let them drown in the echoes. The tape can't be edited, and your return, that's not part of the script, because this time, the ending is final. Number 10. Their ego wrote a check their soul couldn't cash. They thought they were clever, thought they were in control. They moved like the game was simple, like they were 10 steps ahead, playing checkers with your heart, your time, your energy. Fast moves, shallow tactics, ego-driven plays designed to manipulate, provoke, and dominate. What they didn't realize? You weren't playing checkers. You were the whole damn chessboard. They mistook your silence for submission, your grace for gullibility. They thought they were baiting you into reaction. But chosen ones don't react. We read the field. And when the strategy shifted, when the energy turned, you didn't scream. You didn't chase. You simply removed your piece from the board. And now the game has no queen. They didn't realize they were on a chessboard and the queen just disappeared. And now, their ego can't cover the debt their soul just got hit with. Because when they fumbled you, they didn't just lose a person. They lost the alignment, the intuition, the favor that came with your presence. They lost someone the universe backed. Someone built not to break, but to expose what needed to collapse. See, they expected you to crack under pressure, to spiral, to beg. They were counting on you to fall apart, to come crawling back, to seek closure in spaces that never offered clarity. That was their plan, because that would have kept the story intact, the one where they were in control, and you were the one who lost. But chosen ones don't stay broken. We don't retreat, we rebuild. And you didn't just recover, you elevated. And that's what they never saw coming. They thought betrayal would silence you, but it gave you volume. They thought the rejection would weaken you, but it gave you direction. They thought isolating you would end you, but all it did was remove the noise. So you could finally hear your own calling. Now they're stuck trying to cash checks written in arrogance. Promises they made while sitting on a throne you helped build. Thrones they can't maintain without your presence. You were never a pawn in their game. You were the structure, the balance, the one who saw all the moves before they happened. And now that you're gone, they're scrambling, because their ego never prepared them for a reality where you were the entire playbook. So let's speak directly to you, chosen one. Stop questioning why it happened. Stop wondering if you should have done more. They didn't break you, they unleashed you. The betrayal was just a shortcut to the clarity you were too loyal to see. And now, your glow-up isn't petty, it's inevitable. Your resilience is their reminder. Your peace is their punishment. Because while they were playing a small game, trying to win control over your narrative, you were becoming the storm. Now they're stuck in the aftermath, realizing too late. You were the checkmate the entire time. Their ego set the fire. Your light turned it into fuel. And now they're watching from the sidelines, holding a script that no longer includes them, trying to understand how you turned pain into power. Let them watch. You already won. Number 11. They thought you were a phase. Now they know you were a force. At first, they treated you like a temporary high, a mood, a phase, something or someone they could cycle through, forget, replace, downplay. They told themselves you'd be back, that you'd eventually come around, that what they did or didn't do wasn't enough to push you away forever. But now the illusion is breaking. Reality is hitting hard. It's not just that you're gone, it's that you're never coming back. And this time, it's not about ego, not about punishment, not about proving a point. It's about elevation. Your frequency has shifted. Your soul has outgrown the environment that tried to shrink you. They no longer have access, not because you're hiding, but because they can't reach the level you're vibrating on anymore. You're untouchable, not because you've run away, but because you've risen. This is the final realization they never prepared for, the one that doesn't scream, doesn't announce itself, doesn't beg for acknowledgement. It just settles in, quiet, inevitable, final. You're not returning. They tried to box you in with labels. Too much, too intense, too emotional. And now they sit in rooms where your presence used to elevate the entire atmosphere, realizing too late that what they called a phase was actually the foundation, that what they thought was fleeting was, in fact, unmatched. Chosen ones don't chase closure, they become it. And that's exactly what you've done. You didn't wait for a goodbye. You didn't draft a final message. You didn't leave breadcrumbs for them to follow. You became the closure. You walked with finality, with the kind of silence that doesn't echo. It ends chapters. Your absence is the punctuation mark they never expected. Now they're scrolling through old messages, replaying your words, analyzing the things you said with new ears, trying to find meaning in the moments they ignored, wondering if there's a way back in, a reset button, a second chance. But chosen ones don't recycle clarity to comfort confusion. And you've moved into the next dimension of your becoming. Let them realize, too late, that they mishandled the storm before it formed. Let them feel the weight of the force they mistook for a phase, because while they were laughing, doubting, disrespecting, you were building, you were becoming. And now that you've stepped fully into your power, they feel it, not as presence, but as pressure. You were never a placeholder. You were never a temporary spark. You were always the shift they weren't ready for, the awakening they didn't want, the mirror they refused to look into. And now they stand in the wreckage, whispering your name like maybe that'll bring you back. But it won't, because this isn't a story of return. It's a story of transcendence. Final reminder, chosen one. You weren't just meant to survive. You were built to rise, disappear, and become the storm they swore would never come. And now, the storm is here. And your silence is the sound of everything they tried to ignore finally arriving. And so here we are, at the end of what they thought was your breakdown, but was really your becoming. They called it a phase, but now they're living in the aftermath of your absence, realizing too late that you were the force holding it all together. You're not returning because you've risen beyond recognition, beyond reach, beyond repetition. If this message hit where it was supposed to, like, subscribe, and drop the number 77 in the comments if you know they feel your absence louder than they ever honored your presence. Share this with another chosen one who needs the reminder. The storm didn't break you, it revealed you.